I've got a short list. I've genuinely not decided yet on who the ride or die is.
What's the number at of the list?
Probably about 15 at the moment. I've narrowed it down, but Jaden Daniels is on the list.
Okay.
So I've narrowed it down.
What about Royce Freeman?
Not on the list.
What about Todd Collins?
Not on the list. Luke McCaffrey on the list.
Martavis Bryant's comeback?
Yes, on the list.
Ben Sinnott
on the list.
Ben Sinnott's a sneaky play.
Yeah.
A real sneaky play.
Chris Cooley on the list.
When we're
Sam
back.
Howell on the list.
Fantasy Football Happy Hour with Matthew Berry, served by Applebee's.
Welcome to the Fantasy Football Happy Hour, and that's right, the future ride or die drinks free today. The countdown is on to tomorrow's big Rotoworld Draft Day Marathon, where Matthew will reveal his 2024 ride or die. But before we get there, fellas, we got biggest bus.
You know what else is tomorrow? I mean, so it's Fantasy Football Marathon here at NBC Sports, obviously. I'm announcing Ride or Die. We'll obviously do another episode of Fantasy Football Happy Hour. But tomorrow, Love-Hate Day. Tomorrow is a Love-Hate Day. A lot going on.
Matthew, you know
this assumes if I write it. But yes, between now and then.
Plenty of time.
I got oodles of time.
You know, people don't know who Todd Collins is. When I said his name in the clip, a lot of people commented.
Former Penn State quarterback?
Yeah, 2 people commented that they don't know who Todd Collins is.
That's
Todd
good.
Collins
Means we
had a
have a younger-
fantastic run in 2007. He started the playoff game for your Washington football team.
That means
Yes,
you have
he
a
did.
younger audience. That's what that shows. Who would have thought that?
Yeah, the kids love me.
Plus 8,000.
The kids love me. I'm like a father figure.
Right. So that's a good sign.
Grandfather. I'm like a friendly fantasy grandfather.
You straddle the middle ground between father and
I
grandfather.
really do.
Yes.
I will say it is, jokes aside, when we are out in public, my wife is continually amazed at how many like college-age kids, high school kids, just out of college kids come up, recognize me, say hi. So yes, I appreciate the youth of America embracing your old friend Maddie.
You're like Don Draper. You
Yeah.
straddle generations.
There you go,
Yeah, you're not going to get
exactly.
left behind by the
No.
2020s.
You know why
Absolutely
today?
not.
You know why today?
Well, you know what
a
it
big
is
day?
also? I've looked old for like 20 years. I've looked the same, like literally, like,
That's
you
the
know,
key.
I've
That's
been
the
losing
key.
my hair for, up to 15 years
You're like
now.
Keanu Reeves.
Yeah.
He never ages.
Today's a massive day because the Redemption Tour is on. We are making our comeback player of the year picks today.
Oh,
what could
nice.
What could go wrong?
What could possibly go
It's going to be
wrong?
my ride or die this year. My
Yes.
comeback player of the year.
Yeah.
That's what I attach myself to. most.
Yeah, literally ride
It's my
or die.
comeback season.
Yeah,
On
exactly.
that award.
Yeah, this
Honestly,
is a big one for you.
that should be comeback player of the year is Jay's betting.
Yeah, exactly
It's,
right.
yeah.
But before we get there,
Jay's bank account.
we got our biggest
Your
breakouts.
kid's college fund.
Our biggest bust. Well, that's gone.
No, I know. No. At the
Are you
moment,
trying to revitalize
No, that's
it?
what I'm saying. They're all signed up for trade school right now.
Yeah.
His children.
wrong
But
with
like,
trade school?
but if he, if you hit a couple of bets, then maybe
There's one man who's going to bring me back, and we'll get to him
Yeah,
in the final
okay.
segment.
He'll
Yeah.
supply the fund for Yale
Yes.
from one
Yeah,
of your
exactly right.
children.
Yeah.
All right, before we do that, let's get into our top 5 busts. Now, to clarify, these are not players that are going to have a disaster season, be bad. This is a bust at cost. We
Yes.
don't like them at the price they were going at. They are expected to potentially underperform where you're spending to get them.
And the other thing we should clarify here is that these busts, and not that I disagree or agree, but these busts are Jay and Connor's busts. So if you're watching this show and you're like, well, I disagree with that, at Croucher JD, at Connor J. Rogers, because I'm doing love-hate tomorrow. I don't need, which is in essence, a sleepers and bust column, right?
Pretty much,
It's
just packaged a little differently.
Packaged a little bit differently. It's also about ADP, love-hate is. But in essence, I didn't want to, basically steal my own thunder, as it were, my thunder from down under. But, which is you as well, Jay.
I would get that reference. Yeah.
Yes, of course.
As a
Jay.
man from down under.
Yeah, as well you should, Jay Gunn. So these sleepers and busts, Connor and Jay put their collective heads together. I'm sure they were on the text stream that I'm not a part of. They went back and forth, and they came up with their top 5 busts for the season, top 5 sleepers, which we'll get to. Again, this is all based on Yahoo ADP.
Our board of directors had a meeting last night without you to come up with
Of course.
We'll start with Josh Jacobs, right? Now, this isn't an order. Josh Jacobs isn't projected to be the biggest bust. This is just a collection of players. Josh Jacobs right now on Yahoo, ADP around 28, which would be RB12. Now, Matthew, you have him ranked 47th overall. The RB ranking pretty close at RB13. But obviously, the overall ranking compared to where he's going, that's a pretty significant difference of 19 spots.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just about draft philosophy in terms of where you're going earlier in the draft. And so, I've created my overall ranks in terms of where, what I prioritize. And it's obviously the first round has a lot of wide receivers, and because I think you can get running backs later. On Yahoo, that is not the case, and certainly not with Josh Jacobs. Again, I am at 47 overall. I like Josh Jacobs this year. I think he gets a ton of volume, but yeah, I mean, I'm not reaching 2 rounds to get him, which based on my ranks and based on Yahoo's ADP, I would have to do.
The biggest problem is he was just bad last year. He was bad. And I know he was amazing the year before and he won the rushing title, but he is someone who has taken a lot of hits over the journey, a lot of wear and tear. He's dealt with injury issues. Now he's playing in a better offense, arguably a better offensive line. He should be in scoring position more often, but Packers last year, they didn't run the ball in the red zone, and LaFleur historically has liked to use multiple running backs.
Yeah, and I think the biggest issue here is, guys, he's going ahead of Drake London, Nico Collins, Deebo Samuel, and Cooper Kupp, depending how you feel about those guys. They have their own injury questions. But once again, the cost to get a Josh Jacobs right now is
Give me all those guys. Give me all those guys over
agree.
Jacobs.
Again,
the argument for Jacobs, and we like Jacobs, friend of the podcast, Josh Jacobs, we like Jacobs. But the challenge here, to your guys' point, is that, will he catch passes, right? I mean, this is somebody that, that's been a big part of his game, right? He's gotten 50 targets the last couple of years. So he's used in the passing game. Will that happen? Because there's a lot of mouths to feed in Green Bay. And to your point, do we see, used to drive me crazy, right, with free Aaron Jones. But the fact is that even when A.J. Dillon was just running through mud, they would still give him too much work. And now Marshawn Lloyd, he's dealt with a little bit of injury, but I know you like Marshawn Lloyd coming out of college.
But he was also injured in college,
yes,
so you just start to wonder, this is now trickling into summer of the NFL. But the talent is phenomenal with Marshawn Lloyd.
So if Marshawn Lloyd can get on the field, does he eat into what Jacobs is doing? Because without insane volume, then you're hoping for efficiency. Again, he's my running back 13. I like Jacobs this year. I actually think Green Bay is going to kind of run him into the ground. If you look closely at that contract, the guaranteed money is only for this season. So if they want to, if they think Marshawn Lloyd's the future, they can just be like, we're just going to, whatever. Give Jacobs 300 touches and not worry about next year. But yes, I think in terms of the overall ADP at Yahoo, I'm with you guys here. It's just, it's too rich. He shouldn't be going as a top 30 overall player. I'm as barely as a top 50 overall player because, again, there's better wide receivers out there.
Our next one here, Jay, Michael Pittman, which might surprise some people, right? An ADP right now in Yahoo of 44, a little around there. Barry has him as the 38th overall player. Wide receiver 24, though, compared to on Yahoo. He's going as wide receiver 21. And Pittman, you have to like the floor, but I don't know if he possesses the same upside as some of the guys that are going after him, like Malik Nabers, Devontae Smith. Now, I would take Pittman over Stephon Diggs. I know that's going to be a popular name over there, but he is going ahead of him as well.
Yeah, I think the thing with Pittman is that historically you've just been able to pencil this guy in to finish us between the 12th and the 23rd best wide receiver in fantasy. But a couple things. One, he doesn't catch touchdowns.
Right.
He never catches touchdowns. He has one season in his career with more than 4 touchdowns. And then the other thing too is that didn't have a great rapport with Anthony Richardson. Now, I can't read too much into that because Richardson played so sparingly, but his production last year came with Gardner Minshew. And also, as excited as we are about Anthony Richardson and the upside, Richardson might be the highest variance quarterback in the entire league. He could go south there. And yesterday, the reports out of the joint practice with the Bengals were atrocious. The Colts were so bad.
Richardson had a bad practice.
The Colts were so bad that the Bengals were upset that they weren't getting a proper offense to go.
He's had a great summer, by the way.
Yeah.
The training camp overall has been very positive, but to your point, I saw the reports from the Bengals. The Bengals defensive players, this is what they were saying about Richardson. They were like, he's not reading anything. He's just literally throwing to spots. He's not throwing to guys. He just wasn't. It was a bad day at the office for Anthony Richardson, the entire Colts offense in the joint practice with the Bengals. But the other thing that I'll say about Michael Pittman is that, again, we're doing this off of Yahoo. As you know, NBC Sports has a partnership with Yahoo. You got a shot at winning $1 million. And we'll talk about that in a second. But ultimately, Yahoo's default settings is half PPR. And the argument for Pittman is just, again, huge volume. As you mentioned,
PPR.
lack of touchdowns here. But on Yahoo, where you're doing half PPR, he loses that value because he's, that's the argument for Pittman. It's he's 7 for 87 every week kind of thing, and just that doesn't make as much sense. I will say that Pittman is a great player. Going to get a plug in here, but it's true. He is a great player if you want to draft him for a guillotine league. Again, where in a guillotine league where you're literally you're hoping for floor. You're not trying for upside in a guillotine league. You just want floor, consistent production week in, week out, because in the guillotine league, the lowest fantasy football team in the league gets cut, and you do that every single week, and whatever, guillotineleagues.com, I'll throw a plug. But the point is that Pittman is great in that format because he's so consistent. But there's no upside to your point, and he loses value in half PPR.
And our next guy is in the opposite mold here, Matthew, because the floor could be scary with Aaron Jones, where really just because of injuries, right? He turns 30 in December. He's missed 6 games last season with hamstring and knee injuries. Yes, he's with a new team with Kevin O'Connell, but there's a giant disparity from where you have him compared to where he's going. On Yahoo, he's going around 53, RB19. You have him as RB19 as well, but you have him 71st overall.
Again, I'm loading up more on wide receivers early in the draft. So again, it's just sort of like overall roster construction in terms of when you're doing it and doing it in the draft. And so you can look at my ranks and compare it to Yahoo's ADP. I like Aaron Jones more than you guys do. I know you guys, I wouldn't have put him on the bust list. I'll tell you, he's not on the hate list, for example, despite the fact that he's going 2 rounds earlier on Yahoo.
Can I ask you this? Should he be going ahead of Rashee Rice, Tank Dell, and T. Higgins?
No.
Kind of throw up in the air. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Definitely not Rice or Tank Dell.
Correct.
Just quietly, Rashee Rice is the biggest value in fantasy right now. He's not, the court date is December 9th.
The scare is wearing off for everybody. Everyone's catching up.
Right.
He's the number 1 receiver for Patrick Mahomes, and he's really good.
That one should not be close.
Yeah.
Aaron Jones is not in the same stratosphere from a fantasy perspective as Rashee Rice right now.
Yeah.
He's being drafted ahead of him.
Which is crazy. I think the pro Aaron Jones argument is that when he was healthy last year, that's a big, but when he was healthy last year, he was good, especially down the stretch. He was really good. You think about that playoff game. He looked awesome, in the Packers playoff game against the Cowboys. And then, now he goes to Minnesota, where they've got Sam Darnold. And so maybe does Kevin O'Connell want to lean on the run game a little bit more? He's a nice pass catcher as well. Does Darnold dump off a little bit as well, especially when you think about the fact that Jordan Addison's, banged up, and Justin Jefferson may see triple teams.
Right. Hawkinson's not ready to play.
Right, Hawkinson's not ready. So just does Aaron Jones get more passing game work this year than we've seen in Green Bay, and does he get more run? But yes, injury concerns are real, as is last year. Last year he wasn't as efficient, but he did end the year strong.
I think the main thing is just that he's turning 30 later this year. Right. He's 2 years younger than Le'Veon Bell. He's getting to the part of his career where running backs, most running backs have already fallen off by this stage, and now.
Cut to Le'Veon Bell just taking shrapnel. Let me tune into Fantasy Football Happy Hour. Let me just see what's going on with my guys. And
I was going to use the Todd Gurley thing, but we use the Todd Gurley thing a lot. Yeah. He's the same age as Todd Gurley.
It's a good one, though.
Yeah, no, it's good. It's good to go back to the well on that one. I think the thing, too, is that Minnesota, much like the Colts in a way, very high variance offense. It could go really south for them. They are 1 snap away from Nick Mullins, which is terrifying. And I know it's a decent offensive line. Jones doesn't have a ton of competition outside of Ty Chandler, but it could go bad for the Vikings. That could be a disaster team. They could be fine. They could be a 500 type of team, but there is downside.
Our next one, Jay, it's just a hard situation to figure out with Zamir White, right? On Yahoo, he's going around pick 70. That's RB23. Matthew has him 91st overall, RB27. This is somebody that has played almost a concerning amount in the preseason. Alexander Madison's in the mix. Dylan Laube might get some passing work as well. Zamir White has talent. We just don't know if the Raiders are going to fully commit to him being a workhorse back like that 4-game stretch last year.
I think that's the key, is just don't look at that 4-game stretch and just assume that is definitely going to be replicated because Josh Jacobs has left. This is a new situation. Back then, like we talked about earlier in the week, Jacobs got hurt and there was no one left. Zamir White was competing with Brandon Bolden. Now, he's competing with Alexander Madison, who we don't love, but coaches seem to like Alexander Madison, and he just seems to get out there and play, whether it's his pass blocking, whether it's executing the scheme. Coaches just like him. So I don't think that Zamir White is just going to waltz in and be this 20 carries a game workhorse back and definitely get 300 carries.
Per Dwayne McFarland's FantasyLife.com, and he charts all the preseason utilization, right? He's playing basically on the same drives as Madison. In the preseason when Alexander Madison and Zamir White have been in the same drives. Week 1, White 45% of snaps, Madison 38%. White 55% of attempts, Madison 27%. Madison is getting, I'm not saying that Madison is going to get enough work to be fantasy relevant, but he's getting enough work. And same thing in week 2, right? White played 35% of snaps, Madison played 33%. They each got a little over 30% of the attempts as well. So again, I'm not saying Madison is going to be fantasy relevant unless something happens to White, but I am saying that I think Madison's going to get more work than anyone thinks. And it's going to be enough that it's going to hurt the value of Zamir White, because here's the pro Zamir White argument is massive volume and touchdowns and if he doesn't get both of those things, and I think there's a real argument that he won't be getting massive volume because he's got no passing game usage. For his career, he's played 31 career games, he's got 15 receptions. Like he's got a career 2% target share.
Emergency checkdowns.
Yeah, I mean, he's like a 0 in the passing game. So literally what you're banking on with Zamir White is you're banking on massive volume and hopefully some touchdowns. And I just think, again, you mentioned Dylan Lobby, you mentioned Alexander Madison. I worry that the volume won't be there on an offense that we don't expect to kind of light it up on the scoreboard.
No.
And so the touchdowns come down as well.
Yeah, and on that, last year, Josh Jacobs and Zamir White combined 7 total rushing touchdowns. Like, this isn't going to be a super explosive offense.
I think that's the problem, is that you want Zamir White in this world and where he's going to be a variant of Gus Edwards, but this isn't the Ravens. And it's not the goal line usage that the Ravens use as well that you always reference with Lamar compared to the running backs.
On Yahoo's, he's going ahead of Christian Kirk. He's going ahead of Terry McLaurin. I like both those guys. I think both those guys have more upside and a higher floor than Zamir White. And he's going ahead of Najee Harris, Jake.
My man.
Your man.
The chosen one.
Yeah.
Najee Harris.
Yeah. Arthur Smith's new Derrick Henry.
Even I'm like, Najee Harris should be going ahead of Zamir White.
Yeah, no, I like that. I agree. Big year coming for Najee. He's
Yeah.
got plow ahead for 3.9 yards per carry on a ton of volume. It's going to be great.
11 touchdowns.
Najee, on all seriousness, Najee Harris is going to be what you think you're drafting in Zamir White.
Yes.
Again, like
People are just sick of him. They're just sick of him.
No, they're just exactly. I mean, like you think you're getting massive volume in Zamir White, and you're not. But you are going to get that with Najee, and it's going to be inefficient. But like, he will be a workhorse for Arthur Smith in that offense.
Yep. And just last one before we move on. Last year, the Ravens 33 carries inside the 5. The Raiders 13. So that's and I'm not sure that's going to go massively up.
Right.
Our last bust here, Matthew Tua Tagovailoa, he's being drafted right around pick 102 and 101, QB 12. You have him 126th overall, but more importantly, QB 17. A 5-quarterback gap that's a big gap.
A big gap. And by the way, look at who he's going ahead of. Jaden Daniels. He's going ahead of Caleb Williams. He's going ahead of Trevor Lawrence. Obviously, I'd rather have any of those guys. You know what those 3 guys have in common? They'll run.
They can run.
They can all run. I mean, Caleb Williams a little bit, but like they're all going to get.
Caleb can run. Yeah.
They're all going to get more rushing yards than Tua Tagovailoa, and so Tagovailoa, yes, it's an explosive offense for sure, but like, what are we doing this for? We're doing this to win championships. At least I am. You know, I'm trying to defend my title in the League of Assholes.
Yeah. You changed your outlook last year. First year you weren't doing it for championships.
No.
It's a rebuilding.
Last year I was trying to
Bengals.
last year was my first year at NBC. I'm trying to build a culture here. You know, try to make everyone feel like they've got a chance. They're part of a winning winning situation here. But now it's over. But yeah, for you guys, not for me. No, in all seriousness, here's a concern on Tua. We're trying to win championships here, and just you look at what he's done in December, right? 14.1. Like I think we should all remember that playoff game in Kansas City. And yes, those were brutal conditions. But the fact of the matter is that for whatever reason, like the last 2 years, he can't get above 14.5 fantasy points in December. Just 1 year it's a fluke, 2 years it's a bit of a trend, and so he's not running a lot. He's somewhat inconsistent as well, under 15 fantasy points in 50% of his games last year. We know how explosive the run game is, and because there's a chance that Achane or Mostert can take it 50 yards whenever they touch the ball, it just, as explosive as we think it is because of Tyreek Hill, he's a pocket passer whose fantasy production is somewhat inconsistent and is consistent but in a bad way in December. And so he's my QB 17, and yeah, give me Jaden Daniels, Caleb Williams, Trevor Lawrence, and a lot of other guys ahead of Tua, who's going at QB 12.
Yep, quickly on Tua. Tyreek Hill last year 1799 receiving yards. Year before that 1710. He's just unlikely to replicate that. He's 30 years old. He's already dealing with injuries. He gets hurt every year. On DraftKings, his over/under is set at 1375 receiving yards. So it's a massive drop-off that's just projected, and the under is back. The last thing on Tua, here's how he ends the season when it comes to money time in the fantasy playoffs. And let's go from week 13 onwards. At Green Bay, home Jets, at Houston, home San Francisco, and then the last 2 weeks at Cleveland, at New York. Like, that is brutal.
Brutal schedule. So a guy that has not shown up in December each of the last 2 years just ends the year with at the moment, a murderer's row of great defenses.
I mean, ending the year at Cleveland and at MetLife. That's an awful weather awful weather environments.
He's going to throw for 7 yards.
Yeah, and those are two very good defenses. We expect both those defenses to be very good this year.
Tomorrow we are hosting our annual Rotoworld Draft Marathon, including the unveiling of Matthew's Ride or Die on Fantasy Football Happy Hour. That's right, 10 hours of nonstop draft prep beginning at 11 a.m. Eastern. Check out NBCSports.com/draftmarathon for the full schedule.
And the NFL on NBC YouTube channel. It's going to be all over the place. It's going to be on Rotoworld. It's going to be on the NFL on NBC YouTube channel, wherever you get podcasts. It's got a lot of stuff.
If you missed it, Matthew is taking suggestions this year on who his 2024 fantasy ride or die should be, and they're flying in.
Yeah.
Let's take a look at the first one from a familiar face.
Hey, Matthew, Denny here. Listen, I've done the math, I've run the numbers, and I have your 2024 ride or die. It's Taysom Hill. There's nobody else it could be, okay? What tight end, much less a late-round tight end, is going to take direct snaps, is going to get goal line touches, is going to run routes, is going to catch passes, is going to line up all over the field? He's a top 3 tight end locked in, and you can get him for nothing in redraft. He's your ride or die, man.
10 out of 10.
Yeah. I mean,
Truly 10 out of 10.
Looks like
Wasn't
a
on the-
villain in True Detective Season 1.
definitely a little bit. Definitely, I feel like, that's the last face you
Yellow
see
King?
before you die.
The Denny
before
King?
Before you get, put down into the grave. Taysom Hill was not on the initial list, but I'll have to consider it. Thank you, Denny. Thank you
Sorry,
very
you'll have to
much.
consider it.
Denny has
Denny.
the research and development team scrambling right now.
Yeah.
They did not run the numbers
Did not.
on Taysom Hill in time.
Oh, so JSN goes off this year. Book it. I saw an Anthony Richardson. Richardson's on the list, but I think he's a little bit too high. T. Higgins. Ooh, T. Higgins is sort of an interesting one. Interesting. Okay.
A lot of names filing in.
Yeah, Jonathan Taylor.
Yeah, it's.
On the list.
Where is he on the cutoff of too? I know you try to avoid too obvious.
Yeah.
He's
on the
sneaking
borderline.
into round one. He could.
Yeah.
You
He's
could
going
pull
like
it off.
one.
I could get away with it.
You
just
could
'cause
sell
it's- potentially, but it's like he's a little bit of a big name. You know what I mean?
Okay,
Like
so it's not going to be Jayton.
it's not good. It's probably not going to be Jonathan Taylor. Because the other thing is also like at one point he was the #1 player in. Like honestly, Jonathan Taylor might be a good pick for comeback player of the year.
Yeah.
All right, we're taking a break.
talk
More
about that
after
later.
this. More ride or die candidates, and of course our top 5 breakouts coming right up. The Rotoworld Draft Guide is here for you during the peak of draft season, and this year it has added features available exclusively through a new partnership with Matthew Berry's Fantasy Life. Get a Fantasy Life Plus subscription and receive the Rotoworld Draft Guide to help you crush your competition. Use promo code ROTO10 for 10% off and unlock extensive fantasy DFS and betting tools now. Go to NBCSports.com/fantasylife to learn more. And while we were away, the ride or
Matthew,
die
I know
pitches
you
are
already know
flying
the
in.
2024 ride or die needs to be Jaden Daniels, that dual threat quarterbacks are the skeleton key to winning any fantasy league, that Jaden Daniels is going anywhere from 4 to 6 rounds after Anthony Richardson, that Jaden Daniels could make rooting for the Commanders a beautiful gift instead of a horrible affliction you wouldn't wish on even your worst enemy. So there's only one choice for the 2024 ride or die, Jaden Daniels.
Now that feels like one that's truly on the table.
It's on the
I feel like
it's on the
Rotopad's
short
sucking
list.
up to you there. Where are we going with Jayden Daniels?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I appreciate Rotopat sucking up to me, and honestly, it's a lesson that a couple of people could learn around here. I'm just saying.
We'll see.
Yeah, let's get Rotopat on the show a lot more.
What's the start?
Yeah, exactly. Look, Jaden Daniels is on the list. The only concern on Jaden Daniels is like he's a rookie, right? And so a rookie quarterback, but he's definitely on the very short list.
He's also playing for a team that is cursed, and he's a massive injury risk.
That's the concern is the injury risk, and it's a bad offensive line, and
And Cliff.
Yeah,
we'll
and
say,
Cliff.
who's playing Terry McLaurin
who's
just
in
wide left
Thailand.
outside.
I
year
saw
ago.
that. I saw that.
You like
as
that?
well.
28 out of 29 snaps, I think it was. Terry McLaurin's in the same spot. Didn't work in
Yeah,
Arizona.
Cliff is so back.
Coach
Rasheed
Howell
Rice
made
is
him a new man.
Rasheed Rice is Jim Rochelle thrown in Rasheed Rice. Somebody else said Breece Hall. Breece Hall's too obvious.
First round lock.
Come on,
He
you
could
can't
go
do
first
that.
in your league.
But Rasheed Rice is interesting.
It's just the suspension thing, which you don't want to deal with.
So I think maybe you'll go with A.J. Brown. It's not A.J. Brown. I can tell you
first
that,
rounder.
Constantine.
Yeah.
I can tell you that right now. It's not him. Yeah. No
You
one
can
in the
only
first
look
rounders.
bad from that, because if you pick an A.J. Brown and he does well, everyone's like, nice job. That's
Yeah,
what we
yeah,
come
yeah.
to you for. But if he does
Yeah.
bad, everyone's like, you picked
The
A.J.
other thing
Brown.
is that
You don't get any credit for A.J. Brown.
No.
you don't get any credit for A.J. Brown.
Justin
Like at
Jefferson
least,
while you're at it.
right? I mean, like once I announced the pick, we have seen this the last couple of years. The ADP on that player does rise. It's been such a nice run that people have started to pay attention to it in a big way, and so the ADP does rise. But it's got to be somebody that, again, the idea of ride or die is very simple. It's not somebody that is just completely unknown that's never had production.
Yeah.
It is somebody that I think is undervalued and that I think takes the next level, whatever that is this year, to a next level. So last year, Amon-Ra St. Brown was like, he wasn't an unknown. He was going in the second round, and I was arguing like, this guy's a top 5 fantasy wide receiver, and he's being drafted like as wide receiver 12, right? And that's basically where he finished last year, right? Same with Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts was going as QB 8, like in the 7th round. I'm like, guys, this is gonna, number 1 quarterback in fantasies within the realm of possibility for this guy, and I think he finished second. He was number 1 until he got hurt that year. Like he missed the last 2 games.
Yeah, I think Rashee Rice is a great one in terms of outperforming ADP. It's just, do you want your ride or die to be submarined by a suspension that could drop down?
I
It's
know.
like probably not something you want.
I know, and it's also like,
averse.
and the other thing about Rashee Rice, like he'd be a great pick if it wasn't for the fact that even whether he doesn't get suspended or not, like what he's been accused of,
it's
like
not correct.
is awful. You know what I mean? And so like,
You like celebrating your ride or die.
exactly. It's somebody that you want to root for.
rooting for.
You're rooting for, and it's not that I'm not rooting for Rashee Rice as a fantasy player, but I don't know him as a person. I'll just leave it at that.
Let's get into a few more players of this
Amon-Ra,
mold.
like I know, like is a good dude as well. Like he was Austin Eckler, like an easy dude to root for. Jalen Hurts, easy dude to root for. Like they've all been, for the most part, or at the time. The very first one was Kareem Hunt, his rookie year, which popped in a big way. Obviously, Kareem Hunt's rookie year was amazing, but at the time, it seemed like he was a good dude to root for.
Sure.
I have a feeling some of these players will be in the mix. Our top 5 breakouts. Of course, Who's Eating Good, served by our friends at Applebee's. And let's start with one that is close to my heart, and Garrett Wilson. Yahoo ADP of 13th overall. That's wide receiver 7. Matthew, you have him 10th overall. Wide receiver 7, but 10th overall for Garrett Wilson.
Insane talent, targets are earned, right? And so here's somebody that was top 6 in the NFL among wide receivers in terms of targets per game, 9.9 last year, 166 targets with, to be kind, questionable quarterback play. All right, and so now,
best day.
now with Aaron Rodgers or even Tyrod Taylor, like the offense will be better, it will be more efficient, it will sustain drives longer drives, more scoring opportunities means more potential passes caught by Garrett Wilson, whose talent is off the chart. Think about this. He's had 22 career games with 8 or more targets. In those games, he's averaging 15.1 fantasy points per game, and that is with really bottom 5 in the NFL quarterback play. So if Aaron Rodgers is literally middle of the pack, all Aaron Rodgers needs to be is like league average. He doesn't need to be the Aaron, multiple time MVP Aaron Rodgers. Like he just needs to be literally league average.
Yeah.
Can he be Derek Carr? Yeah, I mean
Literally.
can he? Right. That's exactly right. Can he just be like Derek Carr?
Yeah. I think back
if he's
to
Baker Mayfield.
Yeah.
Geno
Garrett,
Smith.
right.
That's all they need.
That's all they need.
I think back to the Mike White era. We've spoken about this, but that game particularly a couple of years ago at Minnesota, where Garrett Wilson had 15 targets, he went 8 for 162. I was like, oh, this is what it looks like. You just have a competent quarterback. I think the key is that as much of a, in theory, injury risk that Aaron Rodgers is off the Achilles, 40 years old and all that, Rodgers will clearly be the best quarterback Garrett Wilson ever played with, and then Tyrod Taylor would probably be the second best after Rodgers. So there is a little bit of insurance, even if Rodgers goes down. Wilson shouldn't fall off a cliff.
And Wilson's going to be the focal point of this offense, obviously. And Connor, you know this better than anyone. But the fact is that because they brought in Mike Williams, because they have Malachi Corley, because Brees Hall is such a threat out of the backfield, I kind of like Tyler Conklin. The fact is if you're a defensive coordinator facing the Jets offense, yes, Garrett Wilson's going to be a focal point, but so is Brees Hall. And you can't just ignore big Mike Williams. No. Yeah, I mean, there's going to be other guys there. So I feel like that was the other thing as well, is that not only did Garrett Wilson struggle because he had awful quarterback play, but it was all him. Alan Lazard was the worst quarterback in the NFL last contract. Alan Lazard was the worst contract in the NFL last year. He was awful.
Yeah, him and Russell Wilson just duking it out.
1,000%. At least Russell Wilson's a quarterback.
Right.
You could at least justify it, right? I mean, Alan Lazard at over 40,
I mean, they started to scratch him.
he was a
$10
healthy
million
scratch.
wide receiver.
Right, and he was a healthy scratch towards the end of the
Yeah,
season.
that's how bad it was.
Yes.
So I agree with you on Conklin. I know Rodgers is a big fan of him. Think of it as, Big Bob Tunyon kind of mold with Conklin there. And if you need any more assurance, I mean, just the confidence that Garrett Wilson has going into this year. We heard him talk about how great it is to play with Aaron Rodgers.
He just has been around a lot of different receivers, a lot of different guys, and had to figure out a way to get him the ball, and it's valuable. Football comes up, and all of a sudden you got to make a football play. The dude's sitting right at 7 yards, right? Just run past his ass, put your hand up, right? And that's the type of stuff you can do with Aaron that you couldn't do last year, the year before. So it's cool. It's really cool, and I'm excited to be a part of it.
It's interesting. It'd be fun to watch that clip back, but instead of every time you hear Aaron Rodgers or Aaron, you just hear not Zach Wilson, not.
That's really how it
right,
felt.
right.
In the nicest way.
In the nicest way.
Not Trevor Siemian.
Not
Tim
Trevor
Boyle.
Siemian, not Tim Boyle.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't.
the
As bad
scrubbler.
as Zach Wilson was last year, I'd still argue he was the best quarterback the Jets had last year.
Yeah, I agree.
Honestly, he was better than Boyle or Siemian.
Right.
He beat the Bills.
You have those three, and then the year before, obviously Mike White goes into the equation. Joe Flacco.
Before Flacco became the best quarterback in the world, allegedly.
Comeback player of the year, Joe
Truly
Flacco.
insane.
I won't hear you besmirch his name.
Of cool Joe.
Our next breakout, Drake London, as we stick with the wide receiver theme here, and wide receivers that are just dying to play with a good quarterback. Yahoo ADP of 28.7. Matthew has him 16th overall and as a top 10 wide receiver. And much like Garrett Wilson, when you hear Drake London speak right now, the confidence is at an all-time high. So take a listen.
I told myself I'm going to be me this year. There's no more, I don't want to say necessarily hiding, but I'm going to be me this year. I'm going to play ball that got me to this point. So I'm not reverting back to any old past or whatever it might be, but I think I'm just going to be me from now on.
Which means what exactly? More aggressive?
I think more loose in a sense. I'm going to talk my talk, I'm going to play my game, and whatever happens, happens, because that's me at the end of the day. So I'm gonna do me.
Yeah, so with Drake London, eerie parallels really to Garrett Wilson. He's basically Garrett Wilson south in terms of his fantasy projection, where you are banking on a quarterback coming off an Achilles to be the most competent quarterback that this guy has ever played with. Also the fact that, they were in the same draft class, get Drake London taken a few picks in front of him. London, the talent is obvious. He was in that loaded wide receiver class of 2022. He was the first wide receiver taken. He went over Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave, Jameson Williams, Jahan Dotson, for better or worse. And I just think that with his ball skills, with having Cousins there, who is such an upgrade in theory over Desmond Ridder, over Taylor Heineke, over Marcus Mariota.
So is Penix.
That's what I was going to say. That's
If the bottom falls out for Cousins, you have, like Tyrod Taylor with the Jets, you have that insurance policy.
The concern would be, and it's not that much of a concern, but he hasn't had a 1,000-yard set. Garrett Wilson's actually able to produce the past 2 years, and Drake London's only a couple hundred yards behind.
But I would argue, the pro Drake London argument is it's not just about Kirk Cousins and a massive upgrade at quarterback. It's also a massive upgrade in play calling.
Yes.
Because at least with the Jets, they were pushing the ball down the field. They were willing to throw it, regardless of who was under there. But Arthur Smith just didn't want to throw. He just wanted to be run heavy, and whether that's because he just didn't feel like he had the quarterbacks to do that, so he was just trying to be run heavy, or just that's his philosophy, because that's when he came from Tennessee. He was so run heavy with Derrick Henry there. But the fact of the matter is, Zach Robinson is the new offensive coordinator here for the Atlanta Falcons, and so he is from that Sean McVay tree. He is from the Rams camp where they go 3 wide, where they play 11 personnel, where they throw, where they are pass first. And so again, you sort of think about that. If you have Kirk Cousins, a healthy Kirk Cousins in a pass-friendly offense, you're not paying Kirk. Let me put it this way: you're not guaranteeing Kirk Cousins $100 million to hand the ball off, right? If they wanted to go back to the same offense, they would have. And Raheem Morris has been very clear about this. Talked to him at the combine, where it was just sort of listen, he said it very politely, but just talk about Bijan Robinson, talk about everything, like the stuff that the guy before him did. If he does that, there's a reason why the guy before him isn't there anymore. And so I think you're going to see a lot of different things, which is using Kyle Pitts, using Bijan Robinson, and using Drake London, getting them the ball as much as possible. It's not too tough. get the ball in your best player's hands. It's the Josie offense, right? Remember Josie from my 12-year-old girls basketball team that I coached. Right, exactly.
An absolute force in the paint.
Yes.
I had the tallest girl. I had the tallest girl in the league. So it's just, you know what we did? Get the ball to Josie. And you know what? We won the championship. We went undefeated. There you go. All the kids had fun. Everyone got a trophy and ice cream at the end of the year. The fact of the matter is that if you draft Drake London, you're going to get a trophy and ice cream at the end of the year because Drake London should have a massive year here. I'm 16 overall, wide receiver 10. He's going as number 29 overall on Yahoo, wide receiver 14. So I'm higher in the overall, higher at wide receiver. Kirk Cousins has supported a top 10 fantasy wide receiver in every one of his years with Minnesota except for one, and 3 different seasons supporting multiple top 15 wide receivers. Kirk Cousins is no dummy. Let me look around. Who am I throwing to? Oh, yeah. Drake London.
That's the thing. And if there's a concern that London is by margin the best wide receiver on the team, so he might face, double coverage or whatever, what was Justin Jefferson dealing with for the past 3 years? Kirk Cousins will just chuck it up to him anyway, so I think that's not a big of a concern for London.
Our next one here, Jay, much different ADP compared to Garrett Wilson and Drake London. Malik Nabers, the rookie, the ADP is around 65, 66. That's wide receiver 27. Matthew has him 29th overall and in his top 20 wide receivers. And with this Giants offense, they're just dying to have a great weapon that will command targets. I mean, last year, no Giants player had 80-plus targets last season. Malik Nabers is written in ink for, I think, at least 100.
Yeah, it's been the Darius Slayton and Isaiah Hodgins type of show for a couple of years now. And I think that with Nabers, I just don't understand how he's not being taken as the top 20 wide receiver. He's going as wide receiver 27 on Yahoo. I think that preseason game is going to be fairly instructive of how the Giants offense looks, where it's not going to be good. Daniel Jones is going to throw some picks, but Nabers is going to get his, as we see that incredible catch down the right sideline. So I just think between talent and volume and just the lack of other options, I think that Nabers is going to be peppered with targets.
Well, and Matthew, they'll be playing from behind quite a bit.
Yes, they will be. Yes, they will be. Malik Nabers, where he's going on Yahoo is mind-boggling to me. He's currently going after Ramondre Stevenson, Aaron Jones, Amari Cooper. This is, in any other draft class, Connor, he would have been the number 1 wide receiver.
Easily.
Not close.
It's not even close. I mean, I would say Jamar Chase and Marvin Harrison Jr. are the best I've seen while doing this. And then the next bucket, Malik Nabers is standing right there, waving hello. The freakish talent, DJ Moore level talent, just so explosive. Giants have been dying to have a guy like this.
Yeah, for 100%. And we like Brian Daboll as a play caller, at least I do.
Yeah,
and I think they will figure out different ways to get him the ball, get him in space and get the ball in his hands.
Yeah, and I think Daniel Jones, who is not an incredible quarterback, but he is competent adjacent. This is not a Zach Wilson type of situation.
Correct.
Jones has played at a much higher level.
Our next one here, a little risk involved when you go with the running back on the breakouts list, but Devon Achane here, Jay, somebody that's coming off the board. I think this is a little early at 26 right now, and Matthew has him
Is this
ranked
fair for you guys to
overall.
call him a breakout guy that, has, multiple 200-yard games?
Well, he played 8 games last year. We haven't
That's
really
the
seen it. And he had basically per touch the greatest fantasy season of anyone that ever lived. And I think that just the scope, there are worlds where Devon Achane, particularly if Raheem Mostert gets hurt, and we love Raheem Mostert, friend of the show, but he does have a tendency to get hurt. There are worlds where Devon Achane is getting a ton of work for this Dolphins backfield. And if he does, per touch, he was an absolute monster last year. So there's just extreme upside. He's very high variance. If you're taking someone like Achane, you probably don't want to load up on other guys who are really boom or bust. But the ceiling is there for him to have an outlier good season.
And he simply just wins weeks for you.
Yeah.
Single-handedly.
Also, just watch the guy. It's kind of watching Usain Bolt at Beijing in 2008. What is this guy? What sport is this guy playing?
Look, this is somebody that I remember exactly. The 3 of us were sitting at this desk when he got drafted by the Dolphins, and I started pumping my fist because, again, I grew up in College Station, Texas A&M. I watch a lot of Texas A&M football. That's something my dad and I bond over. That's our big thing. And so we always, we watch the game, we break it down together, whatever.
I like Texas A&M to win the SEC, by the way, at 14-1.
Oh, I like that a lot.
Connor Wegman's sneaky first rounder this year, quarterback.
Yeah.
A lot of A&M has a lot of NFL talent this
Might
year.
be a squad ride show bet.
It's be good. They don't play Alabama this year, so decent schedule, new coach.
Vibes are high.
Yeah, so we'll see. Anyway. Giga Maggies, I'm a big Aggie fan, but my point is Devon Achane went to Texas A&M. At that time, he was called Achane. But whatever. The fact of the matter is I watched this guy playing against SEC defenses, and not only did you notice the breakaway speed, but this is somebody that they would use between the tackles.
Oh, yeah.
Like he was not. If you watch the college tape, this is not a guy that they considered fragile. And so I know there's concerns about the injury history from last year, obviously, but I think he potentially is built to have a bigger workload this year.
Yeah.
And obviously, given the way McDaniel runs his running offense, sky's the limit. Like there's number one running back in fantasy is within the range of possibilities. And that sounds crazy to say in a league in which you've got McCaffrey and Breece Hall and Bijan Robinson, but he's got that kind of it's not, maybe it's a 10% chance, but it's not insane to say that there's a chance Devon Achane could be the number one running back in fantasy at the end of the year.
Yeah, and just like with the talent upside, that becomes possible, where also he can just earn more carries by playing well, whereas someone like, Ramondre Stevenson can't really be the number one running back.
Our last breakout here, guys, Dalton Kincaid. I mean, Jay, I think the question is simple as this. A guy that's in Barry's top 60, tight end 5 for him. Is this going to be Josh Allen, the number one quarterback in fantasy, his number one target through the pass game?
Potentially. And I think this is just the necessity is the mother of invention type of thing, where Dalton Kincaid, who I think developed a rapport with Allen, and we spoke about how Allen's just a difficult quarterback to play with out of the get-go because he creates so much out of structure in chaos, and there was a learning curve with Kincaid. Think back to the Bengals game in primetime where Allen's just lasering passes off of Kincaid's hands. He throws it really hard and he throws it in out of structure in strange situations. So I think as he develops more of a rapport, and just like the guys he's competing with, like Curtis Samuel, Khalil Shakir, Keon Coleman, and we don't know what he's going to be.
He's far away right now.
Yeah, so there is a lot of opportunity, and there are worlds like Kincaid, much like Achane could be RB1, there are worlds where Kincaid could be tight end 1.
Yeah. And I just know coming out of college how much you liked him.
Yeah, I mean, just special pass catching talent, and it's in and out of structure. That's what you love, a guy that can climb the ladder and make plays. He can run a little bit after the catch, and for fantasy, we love him because, quite frankly, Kincaid's not a great blocker, so you think the team's going to use him in the slot, and Dawson Knox can sit on the line of scrimmage and block. And for fantasy, that means more routes run for Kincaid, and in this offense, Matthew, he's going to have to run more routes.
241 targets are vacated from Stephon Diggs and Gabe Davis moving on. And I know they added Curtis Samuel, they drafted Keon Coleman, but second year of Dalton Kincaid feels like a big year is coming for him. To your point, he's very likely the number one pass-catching option for the best quarterback in fantasy football. And proud Fantasy Life investor, Josh Allen, by the way.
A massive ride-or-die pitch has just come in from Mr. Lord Don't Lose.
Oh, boy.
Let's take a listen.
Hey, Matthew, what's happening with you, big dog? I know you got that ride-or-die coming up, and despite what happened in the past, you gotta go Drake. London for your ride-or-die. Look at what he done did with Marcus Mariota, Taylor Heineke, your boy Desmond Ridder. Look what he was able to show us with that. Finally have a good quarterback throwing to him who's young and surely gonna start all 17 games with this guy. You gots to go Drake. London.
He's on the list, Matthew.
He is on the list, by the way, and much better suggestion.
The production was A+.
Yeah. Production was A+, and much better suggestion from Lawrence. If we've now had two different players from the NFC South suggested on this show, and Lawrence has a much better shot of getting his on than Denny does at the moment.
Be very on brand.
Yeah,
Drake London.
very on brand for Lawrence. Yeah. Drake London is on the list. He's on the short list for sure.
Fantasy football just got better this season. $1 million.
Oh,
better.
yeah.
Creator join a private Yahoo Fantasy League and enter the $1 million NBC sweepstakes, plus earn extra entries to win when players on your roster score a touchdown during an opening weekend game on NBC or Peacock. Download the redesigned Yahoo Fantasy app or go to NBCSports.com/FantasyMillion to learn more. We're taking one more break. When we're back, the time has come. Jay and I make our pitches for Matthew's Ride or Die. We're going to tap into Comeback Player of the Year odds as well right after this. DraftKings Sportsbook is the #1 place to bet touchdowns, and new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets instantly. Plus, get 1 month of NFL Plus Premium. Download the app and use promo code BARRY when you sign up. DraftKings Sportsbook, the crown is yours. It's time for last call. Let's look at the Comeback Player of the Year odds, courtesy of our friends at DraftKings. Matthew, is there someone on the board that you're interested in here?
Yeah, where's DeMar Hamlin? That's my vote. DeMar Hamlin for
run it back.
Yeah, exactly. Why not? No, there's
not even on the board.
Honestly, there's a couple of guys there. Like, I mean, I think actually, as you sort of look at that, like Sam Darnold, you can certainly see. Kirk Cousins, I don't understand why, he's almost 5-1 over Aaron Rodgers. Two guys coming off the Achilles. Like, Kirk Cousins probably got a better path to getting to a division title than Rodgers does. I get it. Rodgers is in New York, and he's a bigger name, but Cousins is interesting. But how about Daniel Jones at plus 1,800? Again, he's been left for dead. You're talking about the New York market. If Daniel Jones comes back, plays well, and the Giants slide into the wild card somehow, like
they did 2 years ago?
Like they did 2 years ago, plus 1,800. If Malik Nabers is like all that we think he's going to be, and Daniel, and they've improved the offensive line, I think just because people are so down on the Giants overall, and Jones, once again, like who again is literally 2 years removed from being a top 12-ish quarterback.
Yeah, you can be down on the Giants and still recognize they're like plus 400 to make the playoffs, and that doesn't necessarily reconcile with 18-1 comeback player of the year. My pick is Kyler Murray at plus 2,800. Yeah. He is the guy who's going to get me out of the DeMar Hamlin hole. Yeah. And the reason is 3 words: Call of Duty. Everyone made fun of Kyler Murray, and everyone wrote him off. Yeah. And I understand that he came back last year, but that wasn't the comeback season. Like, he played at the end of the season. This is Kyler Murray's comeback season. The Cardinals are plus 300 to make the playoffs. I just can't buy that Kyler Murray, by 28-1, that implies that he's less than a 14% chance to win comeback player of the year if the Cardinals make the playoffs. I think that he can statistically have a better year than Rodgers or Cousins or these other quarterbacks, and I think there'll be a lot of story behind him. Also, I think it's just going to be a super fun team to watch as well, so I think there'll be a lot of buzz behind Kyler.
Guys, I went with the longest shot I could find. Jay, help me workshop this one. How about Tim Patrick 100-1?
Ooh,
Tim Patrick.
Yeah.
Now, the voters.
Back-to-back ACLs.
ACL and Achilles.
Yeah.
If the voters do their homework here, and Tim Patrick, who looks like the number 2 wide receiver in Denver right now, and has looked good in the preseason. He's looked really good and was a good player before these catastrophic injuries. If Tim Patrick goes for 900 yards, catches 8 touchdowns from Bo Nix, he's the best story out of everyone. He's 100
That's what this award should
1.
go to. It should go to people like John Mechie and Tim Patrick.
Exactly.
Who actually overcome stuff as opposed to Joe
stuff.
Flacco overcoming the couch.
Right.
Right.
What if Anthony Richardson goes down midseason and Joe Flacco once again leads the Colts to the playoffs?
It'd break me. By the way, there's some of the, like Anthony Richardson is plus 650. He's played 4 games in the NFL. Like, I don't really understand what he's coming back. Like, he hasn't established a baseline of play to really come back to.
Right. So. I still say, Brian Robinson. Brian Robinson was shot 5 times and
he
played
won that,
and played in the NFL 6 weeks later.
I like that there's just a cast of characters on here that are just coming back from being really bad. Yeah. Russell Wilson on the board here.
That's the thing. Like, these
Sam
guys
Darnold and Justin Fields on the board.
Yeah. Kyler Murray's almost the same price as Deshaun Watson. Come on. If Deshaun Watson wins this award, it'll be an absolute travesty.
Yeah.
What? I think we have one more pitch coming in from the outside from our friend at Rotoworld, Kyle Dvorak. Let's listen in.
Hey, Matthew. Heard you choosing your ride or die. Just thought I'd throw my 2 cents in. What if I told you there was a player who had the best single game half PPR performance in the league last year? He had 2 of the fastest times per next gen stats with the ball in his hands last year. And of course, he set the NFL record for yards per carry in his first NFL season, that being Devon Achane. He's got to go with the 101, right? Now, well, Chris McCaffrey. Okay, 102. Receivers, 104. No, he goes the 2 or 3 turn. Devon Achane, ride or die.
Again, just want to point out, better suggestion than Taysom Hill. So listen, Kyle understood the assignment.
Danny did the math. To be fair, he did do the math.
He did do the math. He did the So
you want to give your pitch, and then I'll go.
Yeah. All right, I'll go first.
Not that he's going to listen to either of us.
Yeah.
Listen, Achane's not on the list.
Yep.
Too much high variance, but it's not a bad pitch actually, because that would be a risky flag plant.
Injury risk or ride or die would be like the number 1 thing I would evaluate.
Yeah.
Right.
So I was going to go.
And the other thing is I feel like if Achane pops, you get no credit for it.
Right.
But
it's the A.J. Brown argument again.
Right, exactly. Same thing.
So initially I was going to go with Travis Etienne, who's just completely overlooked despite being RB3 last year and having no difficulty in getting touches in that backfield. But Travis Etienne's kind of a little bit boring. So I'm going to go with the guy who I think is going to exceed his ADP by the most, who isn't dealing with a potential suspension or legal issues. And that's Cooper Kupp. And the reason why is that, we've spoken about this, 2021 and 2022, Cooper Kupp was the number 1 wide receiver in points per game. And then last year, he was dealing with injury issues. And last year, he was still 27% of the target share when Puka Nacua was on the field. So I think there are worlds where Kupp he gets what Puka got last year, where Puka got 30% of the Rams' total targets. All the reporting has been that Kupp has been the number one wide receiver in camp. If he gets 30% of the Rams' targets, and you look at his catch rate and his yards per catch previously, you're looking at 1575 receiving yards and 122 receptions. I don't think that is crazy for a guy who is 9 months older than Tyreek Hill. Tyreek Hill's going as number one wide receiver. Cooper Kupp's going as wide receiver 20, and beyond that. So Cooper Kupp's my
little Cooper Kupp. Everyone knows I love Cooper Kupp. It's an interesting pitch. It's an interesting pitch.
Mine's not going to surprise you, Matthew. I have to go Garrett Wilson.
Okay.
And listen, I understand he's creeping towards being a first-round pick as drafts continue. He's still outside the top 12 in ADP. He's sitting at about pick 13. I think he's going to be this year's CeeDee Lamb. I really do. The target share is going to be insane. And most importantly, he's going to catch touchdowns this year. Touchdown seasons of 3 and 4. It's going to go up to double digits. He's the pass game offense.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that. Mike Williams is not ready to play. And then we're talking about the Tyler Conklins of the world. Garrett Wilson has had 1,000-yard seasons with Tim Boyle, Trevor Siemian, Zach Wilson, Mike White, Joe Flacco. It is now Aaron Rodgers and Tyrod Taylor, and he is the guy. Garrett Wilson is going to be, I think, a top 3 wide receiver in fantasy this
Do you think he's as good as guys like Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson? Is he that level of talent?
Coming out, he reminded me of CeeDee Lamb.
Okay.
Like usage. And he's going to play in the slot this year as well. He didn't play in the slot the first half of the last year. They're going to move him all around. He's going to be a target monster. And we know Aaron Rodgers can elevate those guys. Garrett Wilson will finish as a top 3 wide receiver.
It's interesting. Both of you guys went with wide receivers. You know what I mean? Which is interesting.
Less attrition.
Huh?
Less attrition.
Less attrition. Right, exactly.
I would have loved to pick a running back. You know, like we were both discussing Pacheco when we sat down on the desk today. Love Pacheco.
Yeah.
But it's just the amount of injury risk involved.
I mean, on average, like a wide receiver, I believe, misses like 1 game per year, and a running back misses 2, which doesn't sound like a massive difference, but it's literally double. And that's just the issue, is that you're just introducing so much more injury risk.
Yeah, no, it's interesting, obviously, but I haven't done a running back in a couple of years. Like Eckler was the last one, you know, but early on, Kareem Hunt's rookie year, Josh Jacobs' rookie year. So there have been some running backs. But to your point, yes, you know, it's definitely a little bit safer with a wide receiver
or a quarterback,
or a quarterback,
or a
and
tight
so
end.
With a sneaky tight end pick, the rare tight end pick.
Like
Never
Trey
been done.
McBride's on the list.
Never been done.
Trey McBride is on the list as well. So I got some thinking to do. All right, I'm hearing that noise, so it means it's closing time. You guys don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. So for everyone that suggested Ride or Die, thank you so much. For Jay and Connor, I'm Matthew Berry. Ride or Die and love, hate tomorrow. We'll see you then. Peace out. Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBCSports.com and Rotoworld.com, and I want to thank you so much for watching whatever it is you just watched, or if nothing else, being too lazy to click out of the autoplay after this video started, after whatever it is you actually wanted to watch finished. But now that you're here, I'd like to take a moment here to ask you respectfully now, okay? I'm asking you respectfully to subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel. You'll get the latest Rotoworld fantasy news headlines, all sorts of great shows, including my own Fantasy Football Happy Hour. So go subscribe now. Again, I'm asking respectfully.